Last year, on Boxing Day, I found a really cool ornament in a clearance box. It had a built-in camera to record a unique perspective on your holiday celebration. I grabbed it the last one from the store dusty shelf and brought it home for less than $10. I forgot about it until my wife, my 2 daughters, and I decorated the house earlier this month. I told my daughter about the camera and said we secretly catch Santa in the act. I had an old costume in the attic and intended to deliver some gift in full view of the camera on Christmas night. My girl were overjoyed, and I went back and forth trying to find the best place to put the ornament on the tree. They had no idea Daddy repositioned it later so it could actually catch the living room at a good angle. In the night leading up to Christmas, I turned the camera on to make sure everything was working properly. In the morning, I previewed the footage just long enough to confirm the thing was working. Satisfied, I insert the micro SD card back into the ornament and slipped it in the new battery in anticipation for the big night. Daddy didn't want to disappoint his girl with a failed recording. We enjoyed Christmas Eve as a family, playing board games and eating way more junk food than there was room in our stomachs. Like we do every year, we let our daughters open one gift from Mommy and Daddy before going to bed. The girl, still riding their sugar high, could be heard giggling in the bedroom from all the way up the stairs. From time to time, my wife and I could hear one of them shush the other, claiming she heard hoof on the roof or bell jingling. Eventually, our kiddos dozed off. My wife kissed me on the cheek and headed to bed, while I turned off all the lights. I retrieved the costume and tiptoed to the living room, getting ready for the big feature film debut. I did everything you would expect Santa to do. I ate most of the cookie, I drank the milk, I pet my large stomach and said my ho-ho-hos. I dropped it a few presents by the fireplace, all in full views of the camera. A pretty good acting job, if I do say so myself. On Christmas morning, the girl came running into our bedroom to wake us up. They excitedly insisted we watch the video before opening the present. I transferred the footage to my laptop, forwarded to where Santa shows up, and pressed play. My girl squealed with delight and jumped in front of the screen, frantically waving at Santa while obscuring the video from my view. It brought me so much joy to see how happy the girls were. I was too lazy to stop the video, so it continued to play in the background while we unwrap our gift. I spotted a box I had not seen the night before. It was small and wrapped it in a blue foil paper I did not recognize. My name was on it, but my wife seemed as surprised as I was to see it there. Noticing my confusion, my youngest daughter spoke. "Daddy, that gotta be from Mr. Elf," she said, her voice cheerful and bright. I was ready to dismiss her elf comment as just another weird thing kids say, but my wife wasn't so quick to ignore it. "Honey, what elf?" she asked. My daughter pointed to the laptop. By then the video had ended and that was left on the screen was a preview of the first frame. "The one that came with Santa," she answered. Panic struck me like a bird in a jet propeller. I know my wife didn't dress up as an elf. I scanned the video, clicking forward and back until I saw what my daughter had seen. There was someone in the living room. He walked it into the corner after I had turned off the light. He stood there watching me parading around as Santa. The video went completely quiet after that. It was as though the camera failed to record a single sound. The strange, tall man in an elf costume stood perfectly still for over an hour, watching the camera from a distance. After a while, he walked it over to the plate of cookie and bit the head off of Gingerbread Man. I glanced at the plate and saw his teeth mark on the decapitated cookie. The man then quietly approached the Christmas tree. I thought the audio wasn't working, but as he reached the tree, I began hearing a slow and steady breath. He reached toward the ornament, and the video stopped. In a terrified frenzy, I grabbed the blue box he left behind. I ripped the bow off of it and tossed the frilly thing away. I frantically removed the wrapping paper, opened the box, and looked inside. There, on a bed of bubble wrap, was the battery I put in the camera the night before. My wife took the ornament and opened the back. The battery was missing. I don't know what scared me more. What the camera caught, or what the elf might have done after he turned off the camera. I'm going to briefly relate to you something that had disturbed me for quite a while now, and recently I've been thinking about it. When I was a child, I was always very excited for the holiday. My mother and father were and still are fine parents, and my father in particular loved the holiday season, so he always wanted to make Christmas special for me. I can recall one Christmas when my family was having financial difficulty, so my dad picked up an extra job to keep our family going through the season. He had to work late very often, and he usually wasn't home until around 9 or 10 p.m. I rarely saw him, and if I did, it was in the morning. I would always see him just before he left for work. He would say, "See you later, sport. Daddy's gonna make sure you have a very Merry Christmas, okay?" Additionally, my dad started spending a lot of time in the basement. Whenever I or my mom asked it why, he said he was preparing Christmas present and to never go down there. Sometimes I heard weird noises from the basement, but I assumed that it was my dad working on the present. Now at the time, I didn't really think much of it, due to the fact I was only about 6 or 7, but I started noticing strange things around the house. Sometimes it would be something small, like finding my toy laying out, even though I put them away, or finding the ornament I put on the Christmas tree in different places than where I had put them originally. But sometimes, it would be bigger things. My bed seemingly unmaking itself right after being made, or messes in my room that came out of nowhere. Oh yes, my mom was always real happy about that one. These occurrences began to get more and more common as Christmas Day approached it. As previously stated, I didn't care much due to my age, but one of these events sticks out in my mind, and for good reason. It was sometime around 8:45 at night, and I was laying happily in my bed. Just as I began to nod off, I heard a loud crash coming from the living room. From across the hall, I could hear my mother groaning as she was in bed watching her soap. I overheard her slam the door and fumble toward the source of the noise, her bare feet striking the floor with a smack. She walked out toward the living room, and I could faintly hear her say, "Son, what are you doing up?" Now this was confusing to me, because my mother was in the living room and I was sleeping soundly in my bed. I overheard my mother speaking to someone in the other room, and I could barely make it out, but I could tell one thing. She was talking to someone or something that had my voice. The next thing I knew, my mom was screaming at the top of her lungs, and she sprinted into my room, slamming the door behind her and blocking the door with my desk chair. When she looked into my bed and saw me there, I could see relief wash over her face. Her relief quickly turned into despair as we heard a bang on the door from the other side. We could barely make out a voice. My voice. "Let me in, Mama," the voice said. "This is my room." The banging increased in intensity. All the while my mother held me close. Tears were streaming down her cheeks, and I was in genuine state of shock. My voice called again. "Let me in, Mother. Don't you love me? I thought you loved me, Mama." Upon saying the word Mama, the voice tone dropped incredibly low, so that whatever was out there began to sound much more intimidating. We could both hear a roar from the other side of the door. We were both petrified. Being a child, I felt warm liquid streaming down my leg. I had peed myself. My mother and I were screaming at the top of our lungs when suddenly we heard the garage door open. As soon as the squeaking of the garage door began, the roar and banging ceased. My mother and I were beaming with hope. With one quick glance into her eye, I knew we wouldn't tell Dad about this. As a matter of fact, we never discussed it again. Until recently. Now that I'm older, I've been looking back at that experience and wondering what my mom saw. I asked her the other day, privately, of course, what she saw. She was mortified at first, but when hard pressed it from me, she explained, "When I heard that bang from downstairs, I assumed it was you, snooping around your Christmas presents. As I walked into the living room, I saw a silhouette. The shadowy outline looked a lot like yours. My mother hesitated, then continued. I went to turn on the lights when it spoke to me. It said, "Don't turn on the light, Mommy." A voice sounded identical to yours, but there was a certain coldness to it. I asked the silhouette, "What were you doing up?" It slowly turned to face me, and my mom started crying at this point, but I reassured her, urging her on. It looked at me with hollow, wide eyes. They bore into me, and I could feel their pressure. The thing just stared at me for a while, then it spoke again. "Sorry, Mom, I was just playing." I didn't know how to respond. It spoke again, and this time it tilted its head in a horrible, unnatural manner with a sharp crack. "Do you want to play with me, Mom?" After that, she paused. It smiled at me with a crooked, sharp teeth. At this point, I ran out the room, but I could overhear it saying something as I ran. My mother crying escalated. He said, "I know you love me, Mommy. Daddy always says so."